We were Jewish, and we knew we were, and our friends knew we were, but we didn't practice many holidays.
It isn't a matter of practicing, it's a matter of what you do. It's how you think.
We're allowed to go out, use cars, electricity, and all that good stuff. I guess I just take it for granted.
Reform Judaism today has changed from what we around this table know as Reform Judaism to a traditional Judaism.
To me, a strong Reform voice in a Jewish community is just one of the many voices that you need to hear.
Reform means the ability to change.
Not long ago, it would have been quite simple to state what we believe and how we act as Reformed Jews. As many of you, I grew up in a Reformed congregation, reading Reformed Jewish textbooks, which outline neatly just what Reformed Judaism is all about. But just as the world of our ancient ancestors was spun topsy-turvy when they were brought out of Egypt, so too has our Reformed Jewish world changed in ways almost inconceivable to those who wrote our textbooks a generation ago, let alone those who founded our movement a century and a half ago.
Reform Judaism, as we know it today, is a product of evolution. Beliefs and practices that have evolved through generations of Jews. Jews who believe that in order for them to get the most from their religion has to evolve and change with the rest of the world.
We consider Judaism to be a dynamic religion, an ever-growing religion, a religion which is not frozen like ice, but which is a substance soluble with human tears.
Rabbi Alexander Schindler is one of the nation's foremost authorities on Reform Judaism. Recently retired, he served 23 years as president of the Union of American Hebrew Congregations, the umbrella organization for Reform Judaism in America.
It's an extraordinary religion. The truth of the matter is that we have emerged as the overwhelmingly predominant synagogue movement on the American Jewish scene. We are the only liberal religious movement, in fact, that is growing.
There is perhaps no better representation of Reform Judaism than that of Temple Israel. This year, as the Columbus Temple celebrates its 150th anniversary, it does so in the wake of a century and a half of profound changes.
Temple Israel's history is a wonderful window into the history of Reform Judaism in the second half of the 19th century.
Rabbi Mark Raphael is a Jewish historian, a university professor, and an authority on the history of Reform Judaism.
Well, perhaps we should begin with the beginning of Reform Judaism, which starts in Germany in 1810. It develops in the next decade in Germany and in Western Europe. And by the 1820s, the first signs of reform have emerged in the United States.
It is here in the New World where Reform Judaism began to flourish. For the first time, Jews were beginning to look at their religion in a different light. For many, the ancient rituals and traditions seemed out of touch and no longer relevant. As a result, they set out to change Judaism, to reform it.
We are not literalists as far as the Bible is concerned. We see the Bible a sacred, albeit a human document, which therefore is capable of being changed and being evaluated.
I remember when I was a very little guy saying to my rabbi that I didn't think much of the way that the prayer book that we used regularly in our temple was written. And he said, no problem. Why don't you sit down and try to rewrite it? Now, I couldn't conceive of any Orthodox rabbi making a similar suggestion.
Among other things, Reform Jews wanted a shorter, more orderly service, with sermons in English, and the addition of organ music. It was an attempt to modernize the Jewish religion, to make it more like their neighbors' Protestant services, in other words, to make it more American.
Those that are reforming are largely synagogues which were begun by German Jews who came to America in the period from about the 1820s to the 1850s. And Columbus fits right into that picture.
When Samuel and Rachel Nussbaum, two of the first Jews to settle in Columbus, arrived in 1838, they found what one historian described as a frontier capital in the woods. A few streets were lined with wood planks, the rest were mud. The homes of most of the city's 6,000 residents were clustered around the brick State House at the corner of State and High Streets. In spite of its humble beginnings, Columbus quickly became a boom town. According to Jewish law, a congregation must be formed as soon as there are 10 Jews in one place. The Nussbaums were the first, soon to be followed by names like Gundersheimer, Lazarus, Goodman, and Loeb.
Aren't they wonderful?
These are names that you will still find on the temple roster today. They are direct descendants of the temple's first families.
I think that's my father's father, but I'm not sure.
That almost looks like Gundersheimer.
It is.
Oh,
That's Abraham and his wife,
Gundersheimer.
Regine, and Isaac.
In loving memory of Simon Lazarus and Arthur Loeb.
Today, they gather to research, reminisce, and remember the early days of the temple their forefathers founded 150 years ago.
Now, who else remembers back in the 1850s and 60s?
As way of introduction, my name is Alan Gundersheimer, and my forefathers started the temple, Nathan and Abraham Gundersheimer.
My name is Helene Cummins, and my father was Leon Goodman Sr. My father's father and his grandfather were the second and the third rabbi of the temple.
My name is Charles Y. Lazarus, and my family goes back to the very early days of the temple. And my great-great-grandfather was the first acting rabbi of the temple in 1851.
That first rabbi was Simon Lazarus. He presided over Columbus's newly formed congregation in a small room above a storefront. The traditional service was in Hebrew. They called their new congregation B'nai Yeshurun. As the congregation grew and began to get a foothold in its new city, their services slowly began to change.
I think they wanted to be American citizens and still be Jews. They still wanted to be Jewish, and they still felt an obligation to their religion, but they wanted to be like everybody else in the community.
They wanted to be ecumenical, there's no doubt about it, but they wanted to continue to be Jewish.
It's a paradigm for the development of the Reform movement. Temple Israel begins as a traditional congregation in which these German Jews create a congregation that was pretty much like the congregations that they were familiar with in Germany. And since some of those congregations had begun to institute reforms, little by little, Temple Israel moves from a traditional to a Reformed congregation.
It wasn't until 1870 that the congregation, now called B'nai Israel, built its first temple at the corner of 3rd and Main Streets.
Dear sir, by a general meeting of the congregation B'nai Israel of this city, held last Sunday, this congregation, by unanimous vote, joined the Union of American Hebrew Congregations.
With this letter, Temple Israel joined 12 other congregations as charter members of the UAHC.
November of 1873, when they affiliated themselves with the Union of Hebrew Congregations, which I guess makes it officially a Reformed congregation.
By 1900, as the congregation grew, the downtown temple had become too small. The solution was to build a new one. The year was 1904. The location, 925 Bryden Road. It was a beautiful facility, and with their move, the congregation became Temple Israel. the temple remained at the Bryden Road location for 55 years, until in 1959 it moved to its present home at 5419 East Broad Street. Temple Israel had become an important and vital force in a rapidly growing city. And as a result of regular radio addresses, Temple Israel rabbis were well known and respected throughout the community. Most notably, Rabbi Jacob Tarshish, whose lamplighter radio broadcasts helped many through the troubling times of the Great Depression.
My friends, one of the most important purposes of these morning talks is to bring you strength for your daily tasks. So many people are lost in the jungle of trouble that the most important message needed in the world today is that of sane optimism.
I heard the story that a significant number of Christians were staying home from church in order to hear Rabbi Tarshish on the air. And this was causing anti-Semitism in this community because the rabbi was speaking on Sunday mornings during church time, and the people were staying home to hear the rabbi.
O Lord of hosts,
Rabbi Samuel Gupp's words reached out to an aching nation torn by the ravages of World War II.
long and bitter have been the years when those of sinful heart have planned evil and wrought destruction. We have seen the truth mocked, justice perverted, mercy despised, and millions of thy children crushed beneath the yoke of suffering and grief.
Rabbi Jerome Folkman was also well known and respected for reaching out beyond the congregation.
O Lord my God, I cried unto thee, and thou didst heal me.
As Temple Israel grew, so did the Reform movement. But after World War II, an interesting phenomenon was taking place.
There were many changes. There were changes demographically, geographically, and every other way. And the young people coming out of the service had a lot of independence, had new ideas, and they wanted change. And over the next 50 years, change came about.
Isaac, his son.
Why were so many of the rituals that had earlier been discarded by Reform Jews as archaic and unnecessary now slowly creeping back into their services?
Reform was born of an age of reason. Anything that could not be established by clear logic and reason had to be avoided. But then what happened? Then came that terrible century in which we lived, with 2 world wars in 1 generation, with their fearsome aftermaths of Auschwitz and Hiroshima. 190 million people were killed in the 20th century, most of them civilians. And all of a sudden, reason became dethroned from its pedestal as the saving grace of humankind. So people began to understand that there's such a thing as an understanding of the heart and not just an understanding of the mind. And so music and rituals began to be introduced into the synagogue. Now this creates a problem because people generally like that kind of service which they experienced when they were very young.
On Hanukkah, they gave us a tin menorah and orange candles, which we took home, and Mullane's taffy from Cincinnati, so we knew it was Hanukkah, and that was our Hanukkah. That was it. And Passover, I think we had matzah, and that was Passover.
Some rabbis are starting to wear taluses, some are starting to wear yarmulkes, and I'm not sure why they're doing that, and I respect them if that's what their inclination is. Myself, I'm not sure that I totally buy the concept, but my feeling is if that's what the rabbi wants to do, so be it.
You can see a cyclical phenomenon in Reform Judaism, that is, customs and rituals and traditions that were discarded because they were primitive or out of date or archaic or traditional or associated with the old world or whatever. Little by little, these have crept into Reform congregations. There's a holiday in the fall called Simchat Torah, holiday in which Jews rejoice with the Torah. And almost any Reform congregation that one now visits, one finds people carrying the Torah scroll. Only a generation ago, Reform Jewish congregations rejected this as being something out of the old world.
What has changed in our congregation is ritual. We are uncomfortable with some of this ritual because we weren't brought up with it.
When we were growing up, it was unheard of to see a yarmulke in temple or a tallis in temple, or to have any of those outward signs of traditionalism. But they're there today. But I don't think fundamentally Judaism, in terms of its beliefs, in terms of where it wants to go, I don't think it's changed a lot.
But this is what I believe is good about our Reform congregation. No one looks down their nose at anyone who is different. Now, anyone who wants to wear a yarmulke or wants to wear a tallis is very welcome, and anyone who doesn't want to is also, of course, very welcome. And that, to me, is the basis of Reform Judaism.
Today, Temple Israel and Reform congregations like it all over the country find themselves in the midst of some of the most dramatic changes since the Reform movement began.
Reform will continue to change because the world will change. I hope that we never become a kind of neo-orthodoxy. I recognize that the future is not something which is encountered by happenstance around the corner. The future is something which is created, which is fashioned, which is given shape by men and women of will. And my hope is that we will find such men and women of will and of purpose.
We see people involved in study of Torah. We see people searching for heartfelt worship. This is an enormously exciting time for Reform Judaism. And the reason for that is because we find ourselves in the midst of an extraordinary religious revival.
Temple Israel is the oldest Jewish entity in Central Ohio, and as we go into the future, I see wonderful leadership, I see wonderful young people, I see all kinds of capabilities and talents, and I think we just have a great future ahead of us.
Clearly, the ability to mold and shape the religion to meet the current needs of the congregation has always been a fundamental ingredient of Reform Judaism. But from the very beginning, Reform congregations have often struggled with the challenges of reform. How do you adapt to the changes while still holding on to your basic beliefs?
I guess the most significant challenge is how to be Jewish, how to make being Jewish a meaningful or significant part of your life.
In order to fulfill the obligations of the Reformed Jew, you have to do three things. Number one, you have to know Jewishly. Number two, you have to do Jewishly. Number three, you have to feel Jewishly. Knowledge assuredly is the first. You have to be a knowledgeable Jew. You can't be pious without knowledge.
Abraham's servant journeying to Nahor. Moses' sermon was this entire walk. Look at this.
Knowledge is absolutely important, and Jewish education should be the heart of a synagogue program. The second element that is required is that we have to do Jewishly. Now, to do Jewishly means two things. First of all, it involves the Jewish observances, the life cycle rites, the festivals, the Sabbaths. A temple has to teach us how to do these things and inspire us to do them, and to do them well, to do them not only in the synagogue but also in the home.
This is Rosh Hashanah, the beginning of the new year, and it's a very special time for our family because we're all together, and we're very lucky because both my daughters are here and their families are both here, and it's a great beginning.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei pri hagofen. Amen. We recite blessings over the bread, over the lights, over the wine, and of course we thank God for a lot of blessings during the year. We've been very lucky. We've had a bar mitzvah, and we've had a new baby, and doesn't get any better than that.
We are together, and that we will be going to temple. Those are all things that we hope will be passed down to my grandchildren and to their children.
And to do Jewishly also means, above all, to lead an ethical life, to lead the kind of life which is reflective of those ideals to which we ascribe the name of God.
We are so proud of our youth group, YFTL, for again they have chosen as a project to help feed the hungry in our community.
There is a mandate in the Talmud which tells us that we must not worship in a place which has no windows, lest the crying of the world fail to reach our ears.
We can pretty much eat whenever we want, but we don't really realize that there's a lot of people that aren't as fortunate as us. So we go around with our youth group, collect bags, and as you can see, we had a pretty good turnout this year. All the, this broken bag, putting all the cans from this broken bag in this one.
It's just a really positive community service thing. Tikkun Olam, making the world a better place.
Who's going with me to take
I'll
this
go with
out?
you. I'll go. I'll drive. Oh, can I drive, please?
And finally, we have to feel Jewishly. A synagogue ought to evoke a sense of the sacred. It ought to evoke from us the capacity to respond with wonderment to the essential mystery of being.
A Jewish star, Torah, and a Jewish star.
Let the sons and daughters of this holy congregation, Temple Israel, be true to the essential mandates of our faith, to be knowledgeable Jews, to be doing Jews, also to be feeling Jews. And if you are true to those mandates, you will have that future you dream to have. Then the time will come when men and women, generations hence, will see this beautiful sanctuary which you built, and beholding the wood and the mortar and the stone, and above all the worthy substance of them, they will say, behold, all this our fathers and our mothers built for us.
As Temple Israel prepares to face the dawning of the 21st century and the next 150 years, it does so securely anchored to a strong and invincible foundation. A foundation built of 150 years of history, pride, and the love of Judaism. A foundation built by loyal and loving Jews, determined that they, their religion, and their temple would have a positive influence on all of humankind, not only today, but tomorrow and forever.
As a Reformed Jewish community, I believe we have moved many steps from where our founders envisioned us. Yet I also believe that in that movement and transition, we have fulfilled our founders' hopes, namely to grow as Jewishly aware human beings. We have much to be proud of in terms of where we have been. May our communal commitment to Reform Judaism strengthen us as we go out into our next 150 years, into a world filled with transition and hope. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may this be God's and our will. Amen.
Avir harim salul kayayin vereach oranim nisa beruach ha'arbaim im kol ha'amonim
Nobody can predict the future, but I think we can be very proud of what we've done in the past.
My hope for the future of Temple Israel is that we can build a stronger, more vibrant Reform temple and Reform voice in the Jewish community.
I really want to help to get everybody involved so that Temple Israel is known as making our community a healthier, happier, safer place to live.
Temple Israel in its history virtually spans the entire history of the American Reform movement. We have very few congregations that have such a glorious past, that can look forward to such a glorious future. We wish you a hearty mazel tov on this joyous occasion, and all 900 congregations in the Reform movement look to you to set an example and to lead the way as we work to secure the Reformed Jewish future.
I think it's a magnificent celebration of our congregation's history, 150 years. That's a tremendous length of time. That's even 71 years older than I am.